Welcome back to Learn Academic English. I'm Jenna and I teach intermediate and advanced level lessons for English learners who want to take their English to the next level. In today's lesson, I'm going to talk about how to avoid generalizations. First, I'll talk about what generalizations are and why they are a problem, and then I'll give you several ways that you can use to avoid generalizations. You can use these in speaking and writing. And this lesson will be useful for you if you use English at work, at school, or in other situations in which you have conversations about various topics and you want to make sure that you speak in an accurate and correct way. So let me explain what generalizations are and why they are a problem. So in my class, one of the classes I teach, I ask my students to talk about life expectancy, meaning the amount of time that the average person lives. And one of the things that we learn is that women typically live longer than men. And this is true all around the world. So then we get into a discussion. Why do women live longer than men? When we have this discussion, I find that often my students will say something like this. Men drink too much alcohol and women stay home. So the problem with these statements is that they're not entirely accurate. And for a college student to say something like that is a problem. One of the things that we should learn in school is how to use our critical thinking skills to develop more accurate or evidence-based answers. And when we want to talk about a whole group of people, we have to be careful because those things are not true for everyone. Do all men drink too much alcohol? Of course not. Do all women stay home and just, do housework? Of course not. So it's important for us to learn how to avoid those generalizations so that we can speak in a more accurate and correct way and impress people with our ability to use English to talk about some more difficult or advanced topics. Before we get into those strategies for how to avoid generalizations, please don't forget to give this video a like if you find it helpful. Leave a comment and practice with me below, and subscribe if you want more lessons from a real American English teacher. So let's get into those ways to avoid generalizations. First, keep in mind that when you use a plural noun like men or women or Americans, you're referring to the whole group of people. And you have to be careful because probably there is not something that you're going to be able to say that's true for all people in that group. So that's the first thing you want to keep in mind. When you talk about men, are you referring to all men? Or only some men, or many men. So be careful with those plural nouns. We should also avoid words like always, or never, or all, because that's probably not going to be true for all the people, or it's not going to be true always. For example, if we say women always stay home and do housework, that's not true. So we need to be careful with those words. Next, you want to think about how true it is for that group of people that you're talking about. So let's go back to my previous example. Men drink too much alcohol. This is definitely not true of all men, but is it perhaps true of some men? Yes. Now we might want to do some research and find out just how true that is. But we need to think about how true it is for the group that we're talking about. And then we can make some decisions about how to state it in a more accurate way. Okay, so besides avoiding using just the plural noun, men drink too much alcohol, or women always do housework, we can use some quantifiers to help us be more specific. We can use words like some, many, or a lot of. And keep in mind that a lot of and many is more than some. We might say, some men drink too much alcohol, while many women do not drink at all. So again, is it true for all men? No. Is that true for all women? No. But we used the words some and many to help us be more accurate. We can use adverbs like in general, generally, or typically. For example, in general, men drink more alcohol than women, while in some cultures, women typically never drink. So here, those words in general and typically allow us to talk about the whole group, but we know that it's not true for everyone. We can use other adverbs like usually, often, or sometimes to show that sometimes or usually or often happens, but not always. Men usually drink more alcohol than women. So is that always true? No. Next, we can use some verbs to help us avoid generalizations. The main one that we often do for this is the modal verb may. And when we use may, it indicates that it may be true, but it is not always true. For example, men may drink too much alcohol. So maybe that happens. Also, the verbs tend to and be likely to. This means that it's a general direction, but it's not always true. For example, men tend to drink more alcohol than women. So it's not always true, but if we look at men in general, they usually drink more alcohol than women. Women are likely to drink less, or women are less likely to drink alcohol. Finally, another way that we can avoid generalizations is when we are comparing two things, we can use words that help us compare. For example, men often drink more alcohol than women, and women typically drink less alcohol than men. So words like more, less, fewer, or an adjective like faster or slower, those are words that we can use to compare things, and that helps us to be more accurate. So let's go back and look at that original question, and let's answer it just in a short way, and let's see if we can avoid generalizations by using the methods that I showed you. Remember the question, why do women typically live longer than men? Now notice that even in the question, I avoided a generalization because not all women live longer than men. But if we look at women in general, that is generally true. So here's a sentence that is not good. Men drink too much alcohol while women stay home and do housework. Okay, let's avoid generalizations. We can use the word some. Some men drink too much alcohol, while in many cultures, women stay home and do more housework. So again, notice that I'm using words like some, a lot of, and I'm using comparative words like more to show that women may do more housework than men. Or we could say, men tend to drink more alcohol than women. Is this true? Yes, it is, because I'm using the word tend to show that it's not true for everyone, but if we look at the group, it's more common in men. And I use the word more alcohol, which also helps me to compare, and that is also true, that they drink more alcohol than women. In some cultures, women are more likely to stay home and do housework, while men often do more dangerous jobs. So here we're using a few methods to avoid generalizations, and it helps us to write an accurate sentence. So let's practice. I'm going to ask you, what are some cultural differences between your culture and the United States? So let's throw out some ideas and we can see how we can avoid generalizations. For example, Americans typically eat more fast food. So this is not true for all Americans. I don't eat a lot of fast food, but Americans typically eat more fast food than people in your culture. Many Americans live far away from their families. But in your culture, more people live closer to their families. Or some Americans value independence more than people in other cultures. Americans tend to value independence more than other cultures. So I hope this lesson helped you to learn how to avoid generalizations. As I mentioned before, this is really, really important in school and work. It's important because if people are going to take you seriously, you need to make sure that the things that you say are accurate. And there are many ways that we can do that in English. If you have questions, please be sure to let me know, and don't forget that you can practice with me in the comments below. Check the description box where I have left a question for you that you can use to practice. And don't forget to give this video a like if you found it helpful. I hope to see you back here again soon. Take care.